Hello there, everyone. Heather Younger here. I wanted to get together with my friend Tanis Roeder, who is an expert on emergenetics. Hello there, Tanis.
Hi.
I wanted to get together with her because I've been talking a lot about DISC, the behavior and communication style assessment. And I know that a lot of times it's really hard for leaders to decide what is it that they need to do to just really understand their team members. And there's so many different assessment tools, so many different things that they can kind of pull on. And so I wanted to make things a little easier, at least by clarifying what DISC is, what Emergenetics is. We realize there's probably hundreds more, but these are two of the big prominent ones that relates to team performance, team connection, just understanding of what we need to do for our team. So Tanis, welcome, my love.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So tell everybody, I want to get a little bit further on that, but tell us what you do for leaders, for teams as it relates to Emergenetics and just helping them get to the bottom of what their team needs.
Sure. So I've been a certified emergenetics instructor for almost a decade now. And I love this tool because I use it as a communication tool. Often teams will hire me to come in when there might be an issue taking place or people aren't communicating potentially as well as they possibly could be. And emergenetics can be a great tool to use when we need to just level set, get everybody on the same page and do it in a very respectful manner that's not going to offend anyone. So that's kind of how I've used it within organizations. I've also used it. I've done debriefs with couples and families and all kinds of different groups of people just to help them get to know themselves and each other better. And so, yeah, lots of different applications.
Oh, that's so cool. I think about I had one company that wanted me to use it every time they had, so they had a whole huge group of people, and then they wanted me to use it every time they had new onboarded employees. And so I'd come in and I would, do the DISC, I would do workshops and some coaching for everybody. And I do remember at the end of those sessions where people would be like, oh my gosh, I could use this with my wife. And I remember one group, it was an oil and gas company. And so these are like guys in the field, the hard boots, the hard hats, like they're in there and they're like, ma'am, like, I don't, like, it's interesting that you're talking to me about this because, we are in the field and we're dealing with like tools and this and that. And I said, you speak, right? You actually talk to people. You're human. That means you have to interact with other humans. And so it's important to know what's happening even when you're in the field, when you're interacting with people that are part of the crew that are needing to do the drilling and all that stuff. And so they're like, oh, okay, I get it. So it's just amazing how inspired they were at the end. And then again, thinking about, well, I need to use this with my spouse too, boy, because I'm really dropping the ball, right?
Yeah. Hey, I use it with my husband all the time. It's amazing how much better our relationship is because we have this language that allows us to communicate when we're frustrated and also when we appreciate each other. Like it's a really awesome tool.
So when I'm thinking about when I got certified, I don't even know what it was in DISC, I wanted to do it because I wanted to have teams and teams, but leaders really understand what was happening in their team. Like, how do I interact with this person? How do I motivate them? How do I help them course correct? Or how do I empower them? How do I recognize them? I wanted them to really understand specifically based upon different people's communication style and preference. And that's what the DISC assessment helps us with. And so when I think about kind of who should use DISC, I think of it can be anybody, I think it's great to start at the leadership level, but I think then the teams, as they work together, we've done some really fun things like having the different the different behavioral styles actually align with each other. So they would, the people that were what we call D and the ones that were called I would sell vacations to each other. And we would have them, be in different parts of the room, be like, U, S, U, D, all the different types would have to go into the different groups and then sell the things to each other. It was just really funny to see because they would start laughing and they would see how, oh my gosh, with this group, you needed to make sure that you sold it this way and you use these words and you had pictures and you had this. And with this group, you needed to have statistics and show how much money they would save. And so it was just so fun to see it. And it made them laugh and they learned and they immediately saw like the connection points and started to understand each other a little bit more. I don't know if you've had any experience like that with Emergenetics.
Yes, it's exactly what it is. It's just really getting to understand how you are approaching the world and from, where your blinders are, and then how, oh, wait, everyone else is approaching the world.
Exactly. Yeah. And I can think about, because I was with you a couple different times when you had the assessment for an entire leadership team, a board, which was really helpful to do it in that group. And for us to all see, and then you had us all kind of go around and figure out which it's called a profile because ours is called a profile, but which kind of profile and pie chart was us. And so some of us would be like, no, that's me. No, that's not me. So that was kind of a funny exercise too, right? Where there's like this lack of awareness of our own selves. We think we're this, but we're actually this. Some of us had to, look 4 or 5 times before we got it right. And so I don't know, what role do you think even awareness plays in this whole thing?
Yeah, it's interesting because every workshop that I do, we do that exercise where, we listen to, okay, what are the attributes that are in the Emergenetics profile? And then you go and you figure out which one on the wall that you belong to or belongs to you. And very rarely does anyone get it right on the first try. And I think that's because at first glance, even when we're looking at ourselves, we make assumptions that this is how I'm showing up to the world. And then when I sit down with someone and I have conversations with them, the ahas happen of like, oh yeah, I guess I do that. And oh yeah, wow, I do that also. And so it's just kind of uncovering and getting rid of those, assumptions of how we are showing up and looking at how we are actually showing up. That I believe all of these assessments, that's what they help us do. And I'm a big believer that we should do all of them because all of them bring such value to the table in allowing us to know ourselves and allowing us to know each other. And yeah, it's such cool stuff.
Well, let's I'm going to give just a tiny history on DISC, and then I wanted you to do the same on Emergenetics, because I think it's kind of important to know like who we're listening to, what we're getting, getting guidance from, and just the legitimacy of it all. One thing I want to say with DISC is that it is a self-assessment. And so it's 98% accurate if you answer it true to form. So if you don't, sometimes people, again, this awareness thing, if you answer this one way and it's based upon what you want to be, but not exactly who you are, then the accuracy of the results can be completely skewed. But if you do answer it saying, okay, this is me, you just give in to the fact that this is who you are. When you do that, then you increase the accuracy. So Dr. Marston is somebody who created he was a high profile lawyer. He was a psychologist, and he created the DISC model for emotions and like behavior of normal people. And his career evolved into this unconventional research where he wanted to find out how the will of a normal person could affect a certain behavior. And so in this process, he actually created the first prototype of the lie detector test. So it measures changes in a person's blood pressure while they're being questioned. And so what he did is he decided then to create this book. It's called The Emotions of Normal People. And it was based upon the DISC model and the theory that there were 4 core communication and behavioral styles that were out there. So I always think that's so interesting to know that it's this thing that we do that's an assessment is founded in a lot of research, but it started from this work with Dr. Marston from the lie detector test. Isn't that kind of interesting?
Oh, that is fascinating.
I caught you in a lie. No.
Right?
What's a little bit of a background on yours on Emergenetics?
Yeah. So 2 doctors came together, Dr. Brownings and Williams, and it was about the early 1980s, and they looked at the different assessments that were on the marketplace, and a lot of them have 4 different attributes, and they combine the way that you think and the way that you behave. And they were looking at them and saying, gosh, we think that we can create something that separates out the way that you think from the way that you behave. Because often when we combine those things and we put someone into A box, B box, C box, D box, people go, well, that's me, or gosh, that kind of sounds like me, except for this. And so their goal was really to create a psychometric tool that would separate out thinking and behavior. And so they set out to do this. Before Emergenetics ever hit the marketplace, they tested over 10,000 people from lots of different parts of the world. And they made sure that the science behind Emergenetics is very valid, and they actually publish their science on their website. So one of the coolest things about Emergenetics in my mind is that no matter how hard you try to fool it, you can't. And so even if you go into it saying, oh my gosh, I guess if you went into it saying, I'm going to lie about everything, you could lie about everything, right? But there's so many questions when you're taking the assessment that are thrown out and aren't even actually counted towards your profile, and you don't know which ones those are. And that's what makes it so statistically valid. And they also redo their science every 2 years. So
Oh,
it's
that's
not
nice.
something that's just been sitting on the shelf for a long time. It's something that they work to stay up with the neuroscience of today, because things
I
evolve
love that.
so rapidly.
Mhm.
And so I love the science behind it. And
Yeah.
people out there who love that side of things, they publish this, 100 and some page scientific report and put it right on the front of their website. So you can read all the science behind it. And yeah, we can kind of show both profiles, because I think it'll make more
Yes.
people when they
Yes.
can see what we're talking about with the
Yes.
profiles and differences.
I love that. Let me pull up. I'm just going to pull up mine, which was like,
Yeah.
this was one I took a while back, but what I love about this report, so there are different certifiers, certifying authorities, let's say. And so mine was through DisCert. And what I like about this is that it's one of more, it's huge. So it's like, it's its own book, and it does give you kind of the breakdown. So it gives you examples, things that you can use within teams, which we use actually when we do the workshops for teams. It gives you scenarios and how you can read and decode an email, and how you would respond to that email based upon that particular behavioral style or communication preference that you're dealing with. It gives you actually like a super clear way on how to determine, even if you're not in a workshop with a person or haven't done any coaching with a person or with this model, to determine, okay, what are these people's predominant preferences? And you can just see it based upon how they break it down for you. So the thing that I love about it, so it gives the people who get this, who do the assessment, it gives them the history, it gives them kind of what you focus on, what the main focuses are. So when we look at trying to assess what a style is, and our preferences, we're looking at their pace and their priority. So we're looking at how fast they're doing things and what their focus is, basically.
Yeah.
And so when for example, for me, I'm what you call a high I, and I'm a little S. The high I is someone who's like, come on, let's come with me, come, oh, the elevator, let's hold it, let her come in. It's someone who really is social, and their focus is on people. So, but I'm moving quickly. So quick.
Okay.
And quick and people. And then the S, though, is more of a person who's moving more slowly, let's say more deliberately. And then they also have a focus on people. So basically for me, I'm like 100% people. And I'm super low on the other, well, at least on one of the other ones, that's more numbers, data, and it's just kind of funny when you see that. And then again, what I loved about it is then when I did the assessment or the profile with Tanis on the Emergenetics side, it was like, yep, that's exactly what this tells me too. It tells me all of those things. So the biggest thing they have us started with, and I think this is what is kind of similar with Emergenetics too. You have this this thing that kind of gives you some insights into who you are. And so with this one, it's showing you this one here is not the most updated. So I just realized it. My other one has my S, which is this green right here, is above the energy line. This is the one I took prior to having, I had like a couple of kids, but I didn't. So it was like after having all 4 kids, my S came way high. And so my I's always been high. And way long ago, let's say like 20 something years ago, I'm dating myself. My red, which is the D, which is that dominant person, really like fast, needs results, wants success. This red part was way up above where the yellow was. So I had a high D, high I way back when, which was like, let me just put it to you this way. I was moving fast, carrying a big stick and smiling when I was doing it. I was smiling hard because that's what I did. D's were like, results, let's get it done. Let's do it. Let's move success. I want to win. And the I's were like, do it with me. Let's come. So it was like fast, smile on my face, but we better succeed. So that was what, and as I've have kids now, it's like the green's higher. So now I'm like, I want to move fast. I want to have fun. But at the same time, I know that I need to slow it down, be more deliberate. I need to include more people. I need my team to be along with me. But before that, I was like, let's come, but you're coming because it's got to get done.
Yeah.
So I love what you talked about, Tanis, because you mentioned this energy line. I think you mentioned, and so we have that same thing in DISC. It's this energy line that's at that 50-mile mark right there that basically says anything above that is going to energize you, and everything else sucks the wind out of you. It just sucks everything out. You're like, I can go to sleep now if I do too much of it in a day. And so this is what I love this. And because when you said it, I thought this is so cool. And there's so much depth to this. Like I could go deeper and deeper as it relates to, the things, how you show up every day. So this thing is like right here is an example of it, where it says this person who's a D, the problem solver, the I, who's the yellow people, the S is the planner, methodical, and the C is the one who likes procedures and data. It gives you like where they answer, depending on how they answer their assessment. And it could be from day to day in the adaptive style. It gives you just the words that describe how this person shows up. And again, this is like their main preference. This is like the main style, kind of who they are naturally. And then what I love, I'm not going to go through all this, but what I love about it, besides all the things in the insights, it tells you your strengths, things to look at, just you personally. It'll also tell you what we call the adaptive style. So on the right side is kind of what I just showed you. And on the left side is just how I acted that day. Like the day of that day I took the assessment, it was something that was going on that day that changed how I was behaving, and it changes from day to day. So on this right side, that natural style is like based upon 24/7 work and home. And it's a combination of like nurture, nature, and it tells you it's based upon how you answer least. And then on the left side is that adapted style, which is like what was happening that day. Who was I? You talked about this, Tanis, in Emergenetics, is what are my responsibilities that day? Who am I relating to? Like, what's my role that day? And that will determine then how I have to show up, how my behaviors and preferences show up. But having said that, if I have to stay in this adaptive style too long, I'm going to get like exhausted. You're just not going to see my best side of me if I have to be there every day, all day. Because some people do, they take on jobs that way and then they have to adapt all day. And then it's like, okay, this is not me. I'm like, why do I feel so tired at the end of the day? And I love this because it kind of helps you say, well, this is why you feel tired, because you were doing, what were you doing that day?
Right.
Right. And so that's why. And then it just, again, your adapted language and how you show up also changes based upon the day that it was happening. So I just love the way it does all this. And like I said, there's so much depth. The number one thing, besides all the things it tells you and helps you with emails and how you interact with people, and oh my gosh, all those behaviors. I love this one. If you are a leader of people, so aside from just managing yourself and your relationships, if you also manage other people, there's like about 20 pages in here that literally just goes through and tells you how you do different things for the different people. So it'd be like, again, motivated. How do you motivate this person? How do you give constructive feedback to this person? How do you give recognition to this person? Like, how do they receive you in the way they need to receive you? And so I think the key here is, as we think about both what Tanis and I are talking about, and mine too, we're trying to like figure out human behavior, and we're trying to figure out how do we get better results in our relationships, no matter it's at work or home. And so we're saying, okay, instead of just being all me every day, I have to say, how do I come to the center to meet that other person where they're at, so that then my relationships can be more fertile? And I think that's what all of these answer. But see, like developing your people, how to delegate to your people, how to reach decisions. I love this part about the assessment, particularly for those who are leaders who are just trying to say, how the heck do I figure all this out? What do I do?
Right.
So, because we're all looking for answers. And sometimes we have these complicated, high tension people. There's like one or two of them, and we all know who they are. And it's just, we can't seem to get to the bottom of it. And often it's because, right, Tanis, we just keep going at it from our own lens.
Our blinders.
That's all we're doing. It's like, stop the insanity, open up that, like the window a little bit more to say, okay, what are they really looking for from me? And that's what these assessments help with.
Yes, I totally
show yours, a little bit of yours behind the scenes too.
No,
can you do that?
I can. Okay. So here is my Emergenetics profile. I'll get it so you can see the whole thing at once. Okay.
Look at all that color. It's beautiful.
The way that Emergenetics works, I mentioned the 7 different attributes. So the thinking is up top, and then behaviors are down below. So we measure for analytical, structural, social, and conceptual thinking. And then down below, we measure for 3 different behaviors: expressiveness, assertiveness, and flexibility. And so, for example, I could have a social preference, but I could be a first, third expressive. So I might be someone who's very, very quiet, but yet I have a social preference. And this is where, when we said people really can identify with this and go, oh my gosh, that's me. That's what I love about the behaviors and the thinking being separated in this. When you talked about energy, so these in the middle, those are my energy bars. And you can see my, my social and my conceptual, I have lots of energy around, and I could do those things all day long. And then my analytical and my structural things suck the life out of me, and they truly do. I don't know how I ran an event planning business in the first part of my world. I really don't. But now that I do training and speaking and pouring into people, it makes total sense why I'm in a happier place than I was before. And we always say, do the things that suck energy first thing in the morning.
Oh, I love that.
get them out of the way. So that way you can spend the rest of the day in the places that give you energy. So yeah, you can see anything on the top that's 23% or greater is a preference. So I have 2 preferences. Some people have 1, some people have 2, some people have 3, some people have 4. You can have all 4.
Gotta be exhausting to have all 4.
You might have a little bit of a committee in your head, but you can also communicate with any type of person. And so there's definitely benefits to all different types of profiles. And that's where I found this to be the coolest, is just sitting down with people who felt different their whole lives and having them look at their profile and go, this is why. It's because my brain, it's different than other people's. I'm like, well, yeah, of course it is. You're brilliant, just the way that you are. And so you can kind of see they do something similar with a narrative report that dives into you as a person, how your behaviors and your thinking preferences interact with each other and how you show up in the world. And then we've got lots of different handouts to talk about how do we, give feedback to people? How do we communicate? How do we give great presentations to them? How, all of these different types of things. So you can take Emergenetics in a lot of different directions, just based on what your organization is looking to focus on, what your goals are. The Emergenetics workshop is so fun and so interactive. I know, Heather, you've gotten to experience like a 1-hour version of it, but sometimes it's 4 hours, sometimes it's a full day, depending on what the team has time for. And it is very much a team bonding experience. I think DISC is too. Anytime you get to learn about yourself and learn about each other. And when you have a great instructor, it's such a good investment in your team, in yourselves, in your future production. The return on investment on doing something like this is immense, because you are just learning so much about how you can more effectively communicate and get things done. I fell in love with Emergenetics originally because I worked with OtterBox, and OtterBox is a company that uses Emergenetics top down. I mean, every single person in their entire organization has their Emergenetics profile, and they look at them before they go into meetings. So that way they know exactly who's sitting in my meeting and how can we be the most effective for everyone in the meeting, not just here's what I need to get out of the meeting. It's, oh, wow, I'm coming in and look, I've got someone in the room who's very structural. So we should probably have some structure to this meeting. And I've got someone else who loves to brainstorm, and maybe we could incorporate some brainstorming. And so they are being strategic about everything that they do as an organization based on their profiles. And it is so neat to watch it in action.
I love that so much. As I think about what you said earlier, and I 100% agree that there's no bad profile, there's no bad makeup, that we all bring strengths to the table. And this is kind of like diversity at its finest, right? When we think about how we're all made up so differently, and we're just a mix of pie. And if we have a level of appreciation for each other, knowing that we show up differently and that we need different things from each other in order to feel like we've been heard, and in that process, then deliver the thing that the other person's looking for. I remember there's a gentleman at a place I worked at, and he was, in your case, probably the structural one for sure. And in mine, he was like a high C and needed to have, like, I had to have my I's dotted and T's crossed before I came to him. And I couldn't come to him talking about, and my gut tells me, and how I feel is what this is going on, which is what I would normally want to do. But with him, I understood that in order for my relationship to him to be stronger, for him to give me what it was I needed, which was I needed some sales data, I needed some background so I can go to this particular client. I had to go to him with like a very clear, like, objective. I had to go with him with some previous maybe reports or stats to compare to. I had to get right to the bottom of what I was looking for. I couldn't go into that whole squishy, hey, how are you doing? Like, I just couldn't do that. So knowing that about him, our relationship was very strong. We work with each other to this day as it relates to that, because we understood each other, period.
I love that. I say this is the science behind communication. People always say soft skills. I'm like, whoa, hold on. Let's talk about the science behind how do we motivate people to do things? How do we get them to make a decision? Well, let's talk about the way their brain thinks. And if we speak their language, we're a lot more likely to be able to convince them of things, to get them to do things as a team. I mean, this is the science behind effective communication.
So good. So hopefully whoever's listening to this or ends up watching this later, don't forget to be thinking about, like, these tools and many other tools are super useful. Don't limit yourself. Don't limit your team. You'll land on one you love. And I think from there you can utilize it to say, okay, to understand what each of your team members needs from you in order to really build that winning culture, lead by example. And then at the same time, be able to get to the bottom of it and say, what are the end results? What are the objectives we're looking for as a team and as an organization? How can these tools help us get there, no matter what your job function is? So just know it's super useful. I've seen so many aha moments from people and whole teams as they're together, and those ahas make it all worthwhile, don't they, Tanis?
Oh my God. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put anybody who's interested in you watch this and you're like, oh, I'd like, either one, both, whatever. I'll make sure I put the contact information below on how you can get a hold of each person, so that if you're interested in lining up a workshop for your team, we can definitely do that, because it's very, very helpful. Either somebody from Tanis or somebody from her team, and the same thing from my side of things. So hopefully you'll access it, use the tools you have in your arsenal, in your toolbox, and I promise you'll get better results at work for sure. Tanis, any closing words from you?
No, Heather, I just thank you for having me, and I appreciate you exploring and encouraging people to use the tools that we have available, because I really do think that people get this analysis paralysis when they're deciding what to use, and then they just don't use anything. And that in my mind is so sad. I said, just pick something, start somewhere. And if it's not the right tool, you can always go in a different direction. If you feel like this doesn't jive with my team, that's okay. You start small before, don't release it to everyone right away. Start small, try it. And if it's a good fit, then hey, make it company wide and make it part of the culture, but start somewhere.
I love that. Start somewhere. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Hopefully you got a lot of value, and be well. Take care.